Right, and so one of the things that I think as a district, as an instructional leadership team, that we have to recognize and acknowledge is that our students come from economically recessed backgrounds where there are a lot of challenges. Oftentimes, what they go to when they leave our school is not conducive to learning in terms of having the resources, in terms of having role models in the form of parents who have had college, university, post-secondary experiences. And so one of the things that we need to instill as an attribute in our students is the idea of perseverance, resilience, and grit. In other words, that it's okay not to succeed initially, that it's okay to fail, but that we fail forward. And that because of the demographic in this area, teachers need to accept and understand that they're not going to get a group of students who come extremely well prepared with a lot of experiences in life like you may find in a more fluid community. They're not going to have that type of culture available to them that then would make going to school something that they simply accept and that they do and they typically do very well. It's probably going to be the opposite. They're going to have to deal with things like lack of resources. They're going to have to deal with the idea that English is not the primary language spoken in the home. In some cases, students are neither educated in Spanish or in English. And so these challenges require that we instill in our students a DNA that accepts that they will have to work harder, work longer than other students may have to, but that if they're willing to do that, then our teachers need to be available to them and to be a support to them. So what you find is that because so many of our teachers attended school in this district or in this area, they're aware of the challenges and they understand the importance of teachers demonstrating grit and demonstrating persistence because there's reciprocity there. The student has to demonstrate grit and persistence and resilience and resolve, but so does the teacher, because the teacher's charge is to help that student grow academically, socially, emotionally, right? And the teacher is not, the teacher is vulnerable to not demonstrating grit as well. It can become much easier to just accept that the circumstances are such that this is about as good as we can expect this group of students to perform, and that's unacceptable. And teachers know that that's unacceptable, so it has to be part of the culture. And I think Del Valle High School is a perfect example of where that's happening and where they're seeing greater success with their students than what you would typically find in this region, in this area. And it begins with the teachers and the leadership at each one of our schools refusing to accept that the circumstances that plague these students are impediments and should limit our expectations. And so it becomes important for the teachers, I think, to then demonstrate that same level of grit when working with the students, so that the students know that it's not just the teacher asking me not to give up and keep working hard. What I'm seeing every day is a teacher that will not give up on me and will work very hard every day and will stay after school and will have a tutorial on Saturdays, which is very common in our school district. And that's the way that I think we model and demonstrate the importance of resilience, of not giving up, of understanding that a good experience in our school district is a game changer for many of these students. It changes the trajectory of their life. A bad experience either sentences them to the same life that they're currently experiencing, or in some cases, worse. And so teachers understand that they're the linchpin. They're the difference between that child having a great quality of life, enjoying economic prosperity, social mobility, or remaining part of that cycle of poverty that so many generations of students experience.
So you are developing a culture of grit and perseverance. And so this is an ongoing process, I take it.
It is.
And so how are you continuing to build this culture?
So of all the things that we can do in the American public school system, the most difficult one is to change culture. You can really move the academic needle relatively well if you've got systems in place, but the hardest is culture. And we happen to be in an area where there is a melding, I guess, of two countries, two cultures, two languages, and to come up with one common culture is a huge challenge, because you almost have the American dream. You're trying to integrate the American dream into the Mexican American or the Mexican culture. And so it will take time. The one thing I do know is that the Mexican culture and our parents, our Mexican parents especially, are hardworking. And they've had experiences in their life, and that hasn't been one generation, it's been every generation has had to work very, very hard to make ends meet. And so we know that that's already in their DNA. It's a matter of taking that same level of work ethic that they apply in their own life and apply it to what's happening in the four corners of the classroom, right? Because we know the children have it. We know that their experience, their background, the Mexican culture, and I suspect that even our own culture, in pursuit of the American dream, understands that it will take a strong work ethic, a commitment. You have to enter into a covenant with the family. The school and the family have to enter into a covenant that they're not going to give up on one another. And so when we do our instructional rounds and we go out and visit classrooms, what we look for is not just the academic piece or the lesson plan on the board. We look for the interaction between the teacher and the student to see whether or not the teacher is being attentive, engaging, encouraging, positive, or whether or not students are being allowed to work almost independently and aren't being drawn out. Because one of the things that unfortunately happens in education is we sometimes tend to think that if a student sits quietly and they're well behaved, then they're learning. And there really is no evidence of that, because if they're sitting quietly and they're not engaged and they're not interacting, we have no artifacts, we have no evidence that they're learning. All we have is evidence that they're well behaved, right? And being well behaved is important, but it's not what we do. We want to educate students. So when we do our instructional rounds, we look at rigor. That means we want to make sure that what's being presented by the teacher is age appropriate and is promoting a level of engagement between the student and the instructor that will support them at colleges and universities, not just rote learning or recall or remember, but an actual exercise of intellect, right? The second thing is we want to make sure that teachers aren't intentionally or unintentionally not working hard to draw out that student or in some cases avoid the student who's struggling because we happen to be in the room, and it's better to ask the student who they can count on to have a correct answer than the one that they can count on to likely not have a correct answer. We want to see all of the students being assessed consistently. We call it micro-assessments, and the only way you do that is by spending a great deal of time in the classroom, getting to know your teacher, and understanding whether or not they're developing the relationship, not just with the student, but with the household, the parents or the adults, because it's a three-legged stool, and that's how we will succeed. When that isn't happening, then we work with the administrative team to make sure that the teachers understand that under our brand of leadership, under our model, there is an expectation that they go beyond the academic lesson plan and the curriculum that's tied to the subject area, that they develop relationships that promote perseverance, resilience, resolve, and growth.